Hi there. So, one of my fantasies about this birthday project is telling stories that I have been making notes on. I have been a writer since I was a teenager, 14 or something, thinking that being a writer would be a good idea. That I wanted to create worlds people could get lost in and would inspire them to do things, be things, blah, 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 blah. But I didn't end up learning how to write fiction. I've mostly just been reporting on my life, what I do, what I think, what I feel. And a few years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, I don't know, I remember like when I was 35, I was like, I'm so sick of telling my story. Um, so I've been trying to figure out how to change how I write. What that has resulted in the last few years is just me not writing. However, I still have the habit of jotting down notes of ideas that I mean to write about. I just don't write very much. So, one of my fantasies about coming to Indiana and spending time with my parents in 2019 was like, maybe that'll be a good place to write because there's going to be so little to do. Turns out you can infinitely watch television, and my brother got me playing video games again that year. So it turns out you can infinitely play video games. I played a lot of video games when I was a kid. They That didn't work. Damn. They called me Nintendo. I'm using my Wii U for light. So, I didn't end up doing much writing at all in 2019. I did some audio editing projects, but mostly just did family work, honestly. Just interpersonal family work and meditating in my downtime when not playing video games or doing family work. Um, and then in 2020, I gardened and I used most of my time to garden. And in the evenings, I would watch movies with my mom, mostly Jeff Bridges movies. This is not the story that I meant to tell. So, what I was telling you, this is all preambles. Before you do anything, there's things you have to do before you can do the things you want to do, right? Um, so, I felt like this year, maybe Mercury retrograde hit me at the right angle. It just started a couple days ago, and it's my birthday, and it was a year that I'm doing the shaved head thing, which I've been doing every 10 years. So I thought maybe this is the right time to do another birthday project. What am I going to do in Indiana? I'm giving massages again. I can watch TV. I can watch a movie. I can play video games. Every time I look at my face, I start making faces because it's just so goofy to me. Um, so I wrote a list of just random stories I wanted to tell, and one of the stories I wanted to tell, I wrote out. So one of the fantasies I'm having about this birthday project is to write a story and tell it in a video, because talking is a very different way of telling a story than writing it. So I think the last birthday project I did, which I didn't complete, was me telling stories in videos. So I was like, okay, let's do that, but combine it with writing and combine it with editing. So I'm not going to be releasing a video and a writing every day, probably. But I also want, on the days that I'm not producing a story or a video, I want to edit because I have so much writing. I was thinking some psychics had said to me, you were supposed to have 3 books written already. And this was like in, what was that, when I was 35? No, 38? When I was 36, 37? I don't remember what the fuck it was. You were supposed to have 3 books written already. And I was like, oh, yeah. It occurred to me that I probably do already have 3 books. I just need to edit them, which involves reading them and proofreading and rewriting parts, and then it's a book. So I'm looking at it like that, and that's one of the projects. So I'll probably also be posting excerpts of things that I'm editing. Who knows? But right now, I wanted to tell the story. I just finished writing it. I'd started writing it earlier today. So I'm going to tell, I just finished typing it. So I'm switching from writing it on my phone to typing it on the computer. Already 5 minutes into the video, haven't started the story. And I'm going to proofread it after I record this video, and then I'll post both of them. So, how do I want to tell this story, telling a story? So, a lot of what these, when I do birthday projects, they're about being conscious with aging, which is something I started when I was 23. And combining that with stuff that I've learned in Buddhism when I started it, the Buddhist stuff in 2016 was when I started doing all these Buddhist meditation retreats. The woman who invited me on the first meditation retreat, I don't know if this is about Buddhism. It's something I do anyway, but I talk Buddhism now, so now I'm a Buddhist looking person. This is the Buddhist version of Dominic, I guess. The woman who invited me to this Buddhist meditation retreat, the first one I went to was a monastic retreat that was filled with these, had a nun and a monk, and in the Theravada Thai forest tradition. And she had invited me to this monastic retreat, which was on Samatha, and gave me a book by Ayakema called Being No One, or Being Nobody, Going Nowhere. Starfucker did a song called Being No One, Going Nowhere. Not being nobody, but it's very nice. You can work really hard at being nobody, going nowhere, and then you can hear Leonard Cohen like judging you and pressing in your ear, I hope you're keeping some kind of record. You're living for nothing now. But apart from that, one of Ayakema's big practices was the 5 daily reflections. Buddhist talk, trying to tell the story. The 5 daily reflections are, the first one is, I've not gone beyond aging. There's nothing I can do to keep from aging. I'm still subject to age. I'm going to age. The second one is, I have not gone beyond sickness. There's nothing I can do to keep from getting sick. I am subject to sickness. I will get sick. The third one is, I have not gone beyond death. There's nothing I can do to keep from dying. I will die. The fourth one is everything I love, everyone I know, everyone I love, I will be separated from at some point, either when I die or before. And the fifth one is, I am heir to my own karma. Now, all of these things are just considered to be true. They're not really about arguing. It's funny when I've told these to many Westerners, they're like, but that's not true. And I'm like, really? Check it out. That it's not meant to be, I mean, I guess different psyches can respond to anything different ways. So you could argue about those 5 truths and say they're not true. You can research them. There's a lot to understand what the hell karma means in our culture versus a culture that believes in karma and reincarnation as an intrinsic part of their culture for thousands of years, which our culture has a different relationship with the idea of karma and karma police, et cetera, et cetera. And then especially if you combine that against Buddhism's idea of anatta, that there is no self, that you don't have a self. So how can you be the heir to your own karma when you have a self? I always like to say it's like all of the things that have ever happened since the Big Bang that made everything exist so that you could exist as this person with all these experiences, with all these memories, using words and thoughts and life force in this way is what you call you. From the Big Bang to now. And that is your karma. Specifically what led to this capillary. You're a capillary. You're the end of a gigantic network of time and conditions. But let's get back to the aging, the first one. I've been interested in aging, because I've fetishized old people my whole life. I love old people. Fat old men, they're just so beautiful. And why? I don't know, but it's the truth of my reality. And even in times when I've gotten sick of finding fat old men beautiful, or even just old men beautiful, there's certainly old men I found beautiful that aren't fat, but mostly fat old men. It's a sexual thing. It's an idea of attraction, beauty. Why don't other people find these people beautiful? I I've become, I've always been concerned, like, what does it mean to get old? Like, why is it so attractive to me? And are the things I fantasize about old people, are they really there? So these birthday projects are about one of my ways of working with those 5 daily reflections. I love that these 5 daily reflections became a big part of my practice, because they're, if you say those things and you just check how you feel and what you think about those truths, these are truths. Can you be okay with that reality? Can you be okay with dealing with that and just living with it until you don't? So that's what this story's about. The way I wrote it tells it differently, but that's the impetus of me wanting to share this story. I bought a laptop. A lot of technology has come into my life. We're in Mercury retrograde this year, but like I'm doing this recording right now on an iPad that a friend of mine found in the trash, or threw away actually. I found it in this hallway. It had been sitting there for almost 2 months, and it was not for anyone in this building, so blah, 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 blah. Free iPad, old computers, bought a new computer. It didn't work. I was trying to sell my old computer. There's been tons of scammers. I went into lengthy description of all these different types of scammers trying to sell. Like when I bought my last laptop in 2018, the first laptop I bought, I decided was not going to work for me. It was not the touch bar model, and it only had 2 USB ports. And I'm like, this is not going to be enough for me. I'm a peripheral heavy person. I'm a digital pack rat. I have tons of hard drives. I'm not going to get away with only having 2 USB ports, especially because one of them has to be used to power the device. So I decided to get the touch bar model. So I found a good deal and I bought it online, but then I had 2 laptops and I was like, well, I have to sell this other one, and I just spent $1,000 on it. But it was amazing. I was able to sell it within a few days. But again, like my life was taking a huge transition and everything was just working out. Everything was just lining up perfectly. So let's put it at that. So we haven't been spending money very much in the pandemic, because what can you spend it on, right? So I've been buying this video game shit, and I was using this site called OfferUp, and this woman was selling a new 13-inch MacBook Pro, which the one I have is a 13-inch MacBook Pro, but the one that I have is only a dual core, and for anybody who's a tech nerd and knows what that means, that's great, but nowadays things are like 18 cores or whatever, 32 cores, and so the last Intel model MacBook Pro 2020, 13-inch, is a dual core, and I was like, a quad core, and I was like, oh, that would be great, and it's got blah, 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 blah. So it was the same price. It was also under AppleCare warranty. It was an unopened box. I was like, great, I'll buy it. I'll just sell my other one on Marketplace like I did before. I'll take it to New York, no problem. Turns out trying to sell tech stuff right now is a total pain in the ass, because there's 1,000 scammers. If any of you saw a video I reposted a few months ago now of Mark Rober exposing this scam ring, like when you get those robocalls, when you get the calls about your vehicle's extended warranty, or emails about your something expiring and you're supposed to follow all these links, there's a huge, crazy scam network internationally that those are functioning in. And it was really eye-opening for me to understand, like, oh my God, people are like renting Airbnbs so they can receive packages so that they can then mail them to Europe or Asia or India or whatever. So when I start trying to sell my laptop, it's just like endless scammers, and I have to do tons of research to understand what these scammers are doing, because I can tell they're scammers. I can tell it's bullshit, but I don't understand what the scam is and the kind of way my mind works. I start researching all the scamming. Short version of the story, wasn't able to sell the laptop in New York, just like got 50 scam replies between OfferUp and Facebook Marketplace, and I was just like, this is a pain in the ass. So I brought the laptop back to Indiana and I posted it here and got a good deal of scammers, and a lot of other local people just being like, hey, can I get it for $500? It's the touch bar model. It's got 4 ports. It's still selling for like $900 on back market, $850 on back market, $870, and selling on eBay between $800 and $900, sometimes a little over $900. I was hoping to get $1,000 for it. It didn't look like that was going to happen, but I posted it like a little more, hoping that I could give somebody a discount. Everybody wants a discount, then I could still get what I wanted, right? So I'm getting a lot of bullshit. And then this kid, and I say kid, because I look at his Facebook profile and I could tell it wasn't a very developed Facebook profile, like might be fake, but he was a local Carmel kid, and he wasn't asking me to mail it. He wasn't asking to pay me through Zelle or PayPal. So I was like, okay, well, at least it's not that scam. What could this scam possibly be? He wanted me to meet him in the park the next day. I was like, okay. There was a park. It was a 10-minute drive from my house. So I was like, okay. Um, and yeah, the only paranoia that had come up my mind was like, well, what if he has a gang of people and they just beat me up and take the laptop? But there's a lot of fear and paranoia, and so I didn't really give that a lot of time. And I went there, and I'll make this brief. I went to the park, and he talked to me for like an hour, and he hemmed and hawed, and then decided he just couldn't pay. Like, he was like, oh, I forgot my money, and he walked back to his house, and I'm like, well, he's not coming back. But then he came back, but then he said he couldn't pay, that it was just too much, and he was really sorry, man, and whatever. I left, I came home, and he sent me another text, and he's like, I don't know what came over me, man, I'm so sorry. And I'm just like, well, whatever, just let me know if you change your mind. And there were many other people over the next week who were bullshitting me about like, well, when we buy these, we buy them for like $500. I'm like, well, you're reselling them. And he's like, no, we're not reselling them. I'm just me and my wife. I'm like, whatever. Just so much bullshit. And like, it's just not working out. Sometimes things work out, sometimes they don't. So the kid messages me back, and I had a friend visiting for a few days, and my friend had left, and this kid messages me back, and he's like, okay, for real this time, I'm ready to buy the laptop. And I was like, okay, but I kind of was busy working in the garden, so I forgot to go to where his, when to meet him when he said because I was busy working in the garden. So I messaged him and I got it, and I was like, oh, I'm sorry I missed, the appointment. Do you want to meet tomorrow? I can come out now if you want. He was like, well, I got to wait till my parents are asleep and I can sneak out. And I was like, that sounds a little sketchy. I think he had said he was 19, and we didn't talk about it, but I think his Facebook profile said he was 19. But when I met him, he was like, and I reflected in my mind, I was like, this kid's probably like 16, or like he's like a high schooler or something. So maybe that's why he's being sketchy. So we decide to meet at like 11:15 in this like suburban park, soccer fields, and we're sitting on this bleacher and we're talking. And again, it's like 45 minutes of me showing him things on the laptop and blah, blah, blah. And I don't have a case, like I don't have a bag that I'm selling this laptop in. I put it in like a Netflix mailer, a little bubble wrap to protect it with its cord and its charger. And I'm like, okay, so I've been answering all your questions and I'm happy to help you out, but dude, it's midnight. We've been talking for 45 minutes. You gotta buy it. You said you were gonna buy it. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Hold on, I just need to walk for a minute. And he just like walked off into the dark. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not gonna see him again. But then he came back and he stood next to me and he was like, and then he grabbed the laptop and he ran. And I was just like, wow, he just stole the laptop. No, I didn't even. That's one of the fun things about this was that there was no thinking. There was no time for thinking. There was just, I jumped up off the bleacher and started running. And I am not a runner. Even though I'm relatively fit, for one thing, I'm like 15 or 20 pounds heavier than I've ever been in my life. And I really messed up my ankle this winter. Couldn't walk for a month, and then like was still in a lot of pain for the next month. And at this point, this is maybe a month after I was out of pain. And since I've been coming to Indiana, I feel like it's demons or something. There's lots of demons in this house, the weird psychics say. My right ankle's been hurting a lot, so I've had some weird insecurity about my feet, my ankles, and I'm not thinking about any of that. All I know is that I have to chase this kid and get the laptop back. And it's midnight, We're running through a parking lot. I'm wearing sandals that aren't even looped over my heels. They fall off, and I just keep running. And I'm aware, for any of you who've done mindfulness experience, I'm aware of my feet hitting, the sensation of feet hitting pavement, the texture. Was able to later be grateful that I didn't step on anything sharp like a rock or a broken glass or a bottle cap even, nothing, because I'm running barefoot. Not a runner, not a barefoot runner. I do a lot of barefoot walking and hiking, but that's very different than running. Part of it, you can step gingerly to not hurt yourself. So I'm running, and this kid's way ahead of me, and he's 16, and I'm 42, almost 43, and I'm really quite shocked that I'm not shocked. There is no thinking, there's no judging. I'm gaining on him. There's no chance of him running off with my laptop. I'm gaining on him. And he starts squealing. And I think he said, "Sorry, dude," when he grabbed the laptop and started running. And I'm going to reflect here that there were some spoilers, or what do you call it, foreshadowing in the text, in the interactions on Facebook, because the profile picture is a football player running, and his first message to me was, "I'll take it." I'll take it. Which, I just took as like, oh, he wants my laptop. But what he meant was, I'm going to steal your laptop from you. So I'm running after him, and we're getting closer, and all I can feel is the full-bodied purpose of doing something. For anyone who has been free to the extent that they have gigantic periods of their life, which a lot of you who are retired might know what I'm talking about, gigantic periods of your life where you don't know what the hell you're doing with your life. You just have time that you have to get. How do I fill up the next 6 hours? How do I fill up the next 6 days? How do I fill up the next 6 years? There's often this floaty feeling of not having purpose. And most of my life, even growing up, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a wizard. Don't you want to be an astronaut or a lawyer or a doctor? No, I want to cross between dimensions. But honey, that's not real. What the fuck am I supposed to do with my life then? I've always had a lack of purpose. So they're like, I want to change the entirety of reality. I've always had a lack of purpose. So I was absorbed in this purpose, being moved by this passion or adrenaline. And it was really an amazing experience, but it was also an amazing experience to notice, again, I wasn't thinking of this at the time, it was all in reflection, that I was a 42-year-old, slightly chubby, injured man who was chasing down a 16 or 17-year-old, though he was a weedy, nerdy kid, frail. I didn't mention that he was wearing a wrist brace the first day I met him, and it reminded me when I was a nerdy 18, 19-year-old and wore a wrist brace because I just felt weak, hurt, So I almost caught him, and he squealed and was like, "I'm so sorry, man, I'm so sorry, here's your laptop." And he put it down gingerly in the grass as he ran, and he kept running. But it was like right where the sidewalk ends. I don't know if any of you have ever been stuck in hellish suburb land. My parents don't live in suburb land, but suburb land is eating up the entirety of what used to be farm fields. And I have no love for farm fields because it's just commercial agriculture. It's like living inside of a factory, but it's just a plant factory. It's not nature. I don't think so. But the sidewalks don't go anywhere a lot of the time. They just are in a little section of development, and then they stop because development is done in plots and sections. And a lot of intersections will have a sidewalk that's like 16 feet long and it goes nowhere. Just like in the future, this might be a city and people might use this sidewalk. But, in the Midwest and most of America, besides New York and some of the other, sections of some of the other cities, no Americans walk anywhere. They just drive everywhere. And then they play sports, but they don't actually just walk from place to place. Not that I need to rant about that, but I let him run off the sidewalk. And I just pick up the laptop and turn around and I walk back to the car, again having this sensation of my heart beating and the breathing. But it doesn't feel labored, it doesn't feel broken, it doesn't feel burning. Sometimes if you're, I've had lots of trouble with breathing and aerobic activities when I was younger. I had asthma and stuff. It didn't feel painful. I was just feeling these waves of heat moving through my body, and my feet on the ground, the muscles in my body, and I just stooped and picked up my sandals as I walked by them, got in the car, rolled up the windows, locked the doors. The adrenaline was still like enough to be like, oh, God, my danger. And I just started driving, but as I was driving, I brought up his Facebook profile and blocked it and left the conversation. I was like, I don't want to hear anything more from this guy. I'm done with him. And I thought, I still want to say that was a gift, right? It was a gift that I was shown that even though I've been aging and in recent years having trouble with my knees, having trouble with my ankles, that have made me feel really insecure about my identity as the yoga guy, the qigong guy. I fucked up my arm somehow last year gardening, was swinging a pickaxe, and it developed into this place where like even doing small, like gentle, not even small, but I mean like slow, gentle qigong movements, I couldn't do them because my arm was inflamed, my shoulder. I'm like, aging, what the fuck? You know? Like there's good things about aging, maturity, and I guess this gets into that part as well, that a lot of the times when I told this story to friends, they would say, I would have left the laptop there and caught up with the motherfucker and broke his nose, or broken his rib, or left some scars on him, or just taught him a lesson. You know, these kind of impulses of anger, which I did, you know, briefly afterwards. Maybe the next day, I thought, you know, I could probably sit outside of the place where I'm pretty sure his house is and wait for him to come off the school bus and then beat the fuck out of the kid. But that was only, again, a little flash in my mind, like the paranoia of him being with a group of people who'd beat me up earlier. Part of me is just really grateful that I didn't even have that impulse when he stole the laptop from me. Because I wouldn't want to have to live with knowing that I hurt someone who's obviously weaker than me, somebody I could outrun, somebody who's weedy and young. And I have training in how to kill someone from Taekwondo, not that I'm up on it, but I know I could break his ribs and break his nose. I know that. I wouldn't want to have to live with those actions. I'm not even talking about some mystical karma thing, but just the feeling of hurting someone who so obviously could be hurt and is, you know, to be fair, the kid is so fucking tortured anyway, like most people are, but he now knows that he's a thief and a bad thief. He has to live with that. Fuck him. And, you know, chances are he'll just grow up to be a CEO or the president of the United States because he'll fragment his mind in such a way that makes him believe that being a thief and a bad thief is fine. Like we just had a great example of that as president. And, you know, countless examples of that. You've met many people in your life who have understood that it's okay to be a thief. In fact, you're probably a thief yourself. I still sometimes steal shit off the internet. Why do we do this? Why do we download movies just because? I mean, I rent some sometimes, but I can't even find the one I want to rent. I'll just download it. It's all there for the taking. None of us are perfect. But I feel like, you know, his karma's not my responsibility, and I'm still grateful, as it were, to know that even in my insecurities of aging, that I was given an example of still being strong and capable. And, as I said, experiencing the purpose of movement, of drive, of complete vitaka vichara, of knowing the focus and staying with the experience as it's happening. Like it was really, I know that that's like that's probably why a lot of adrenaline junkies do adrenaline junkie sports, but it was a really great physical experience, unlike any that I've had. I don't want repeat experiences that make me have to run for my life, but I'm grateful for having had the experience. And that's what I wanted to share, long-winded and tangentially, as I do tell stories. If any of you watch this, I hope the audio's all right. This is a new experience trying to use the iPad as a, thank you, Tony, as a recording device. And again, this lighting is probably horrific, but, you know, I have my little, like, glowy lights on in the room and the TV on behind the iPad. Because, you know, I live in America where everybody has extra TVs and extra things, everything, everywhere. I've got an extra laptop if anybody wants one. I love you. Happy birthday to me. And happy birthday to you. May you be at peace with your aging.